Okay, this week the Parsha is the portion of Akev. Akev Tishmun es hamishpotim ha'eleh. And if you will listen or you will heed these mishpotim, which said many times, the Torah refers to certain dictates as chukim, others as mishpotim, and others as edus. Chukim always means statutes. Mishpotim are laws which are rational laws. Edus are testaments. We do certain mitzvahs to commemorate certain events. Shabbos is edus, as it says in Torah, Osi beini beinechem. It's a sign between us, a sign of distinction. It's to understand and remember that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the creator of the world. Creation was a 6-day process. On the 7th day, he refrained from creation. And yet, when we speak in this particular posuk, V'yekev tishmun eis hamishpotim, and if you will listen to the mishpotim, the rational laws, no mention of the chukim. It should say hachukim v'esa mishpotim, the statutes and the mishpotim and the laws. Also, there's the obvious question. It could have said voya im tishmun. Akev and im mean the same thing. And if you will listen, if you will heed the laws, what's the word akev? So Rashi cites the famous midrash, Imam mitzvahs hakalo she'odom dosh ba'akev of tishmun. That if even the seemingly less important mitzvahs, the light mitzvahs, which a person normally tramples on with his heels, akev, okev, is what means the heel. Boy akev tishmun. And if you will heed even the mitzvahs which are normally neglected and glossed over, ushmartem v'asisim osam, you will watch them, you retain them, and you will actualize them. V'shom Hashem elokecho l'cho es habris. If you do that, Hashem will uphold on your behalf the bris as a chesed shinshmal avsecho. If you are sensitive even to the mitzvahs which are normally neglected and glossed over, ushmartem v'asisim osam, you will retain them and you will actualize them. Hashem will uphold the bris, the chesed, which he promised, which he swore to your avos. This is going to be a consequence of that. V'ahevcho, he will love you. Ve'iracho, ve'irbecho, he will bless you, will increase your numbers. Ve'irach pei vidnocho, he will bless the fruit of your womb. Ufriad nosecho, the fruit of the ground. The gondcho, then starts delineating the grain, the wine, the oil. Al shkar lofecho v'ashutzonecho, the livestock. Al adom ashenish belavsech lo seisloch. I mean, it's unbelievable. If you're sensitive to seemingly the less important mitzvahs, which most people neglect, and the expression is people trample on with their heels. But if you go and you observe them, and you retain them, and you actualize them, you merit everything. Hashem will respond in the most positive way towards you, upholding the covenant, and he will do the chesed, and the bounty is unlimited. The bracha is unlimited. I mean, what's so important? If a person observes even the seemingly less important mitzvahs, why is that the so-called the differentiator? You do that, you merit everything. If you don't do that, you don't merit that special bracha. Also, it's interesting. I pointed out, why is it mishpotim? The rational laws. Also, it seems to be a midah keneged midah over here. It's a measure for merit. if you observe even the less important mitzvahs, the mitzvahs which are normally neglected, ushmartem v'asisem osam. We had in last week's parsha, shmartem means you review them, because without review you don't retain, and as a result of that you will do them. In Parshas Veschanan it says that if we review the mitzvahs and we observe them, the world will see us as Am Chochem V'Novon. We'll be seen as a wise, insightful people. So Rashi over there explains, if you take a look at Rashi, very interesting. Ushmartem v'asisem osam. Shmira. Shmira is a person who's a responsible custodian, a shomer. You have Torah, you review it. When you review it, you will do that. So over there, Rashi explains, but if you don't review it, as a result of not reviewing it, you will not remember accurately what it is, and as a result of that, you're going to corrupt the mitzvos. You won't do them properly. Ta'afsu. Rashi uses the word ta'afsu. You become corrupted. So you must review and have it in mind, clear. Due to retention, then you will observe it. That's a separate. We see over here a midah keneged midah. If you shmart v'asisem osam, if you review them, you retain them, and you're responsible to the Torah, v'shomer Hashem elokecha lochas habris, then Hashem will uphold the bris. This is shmira versus shmira. If you're going to be shmartem, then Hashem will be v'shomer Hashem elokecha lochas es habris, es chesed. That's number one. We read in Pirkei Avos that a person forgets his learning that he had studied, Harezim is chai benafsho. There's a great degree of liability. But it's only something, it's due to his own negligence, his own level of irresponsibility. But if a person, because of his old age, which is just part of the natural process, people forget when they get older, there's no claim against the person. As we see by the Shivrei Luchos, that the broken tablets, they had value, although the Torah wasn't on them, because originally the Torah was etched on those stones. But if a person goes, due to his own lack of appreciation of value, it's forgotten, Harez Mischai ben Nafsho. We speak about Barosi Yitzhak Barosi Torah Tavlin. The Torah itself is the only antidote to the Yetzer Hara, to the evil inclination. The only way we could incapacitate the evil inclination is only through the study of Torah. There's no other way. The Mesilas Yesharim writes that a person, as much as you may believe and convince yourself and delude yourself, there are other ways to deal with the Yetzer Hara, with the evil inclination. Hashem says, I am your creator. I created the evil inclination. Barasi Yetzer Barasi Torah Tavlin. The Torah was created as a Tavlin, as the antidote. There's no other antidote to deal with it. Ushmartem. Now, how does the Torah, how do you retain it as an antidote? As we say, if you review it, then it's vasisem. Then you will perform the mitzvah accurately. If you don't retain it, that means you have a certain vague understanding of what it is. You're not going to fulfill it accurately. Rashi uses the term in last week's parsha, ta'afsu. You're going to corrupt them. So the only time that it's that potent antidote to incapacitate the Yetzer Hara, this is only ushmartim. If you're going to be shmartim, you're going to be vigilant and responsible to retain it, and asisem, therefore, that will be done correctly. V'shoma Hashem elokech l'cho es habris, he'll uphold the bris, the covenant, the ches, and so on and so forth, and you're going to merit all the bounty, all the bracha. But again, let's get back to the original question. Akev is to indicate that if you are vigilant even for the mitzvos, which most people neglect, they abuse, the equivalent they trample on with their heels, the mitzvos which are undervalued, it's not that important. So they don't give it the same level of focus and attention. Then you're not going to merit this. But otherwise, you will. What's it all about? Now, we read in Pirkei Avos, have a rotzla mitzvah kalo. You should even run to do even a less important mitzvah. Why? Because mitzvahs. Because you really don't know the innate value of a mitzvah. Would you consider something which doesn't have value? It may have infinite value, and does have infinite value. So that is the motivation to go after the mitzvah. Let's understand something. Why does a person do a mitzvah? We speak about a mitzvah lishma. A mitzvah lishma means you do it for the sake of the mitzvah. You do it for the sake of God. So the Sisham writes, if a person does a mitzvah because he wants to have a share in the world to come, that's lishma. It's not a question, that's lishma. But as much as it's lishma, it's for the sake of the mitzvah with the right intent. It's not the ultimate level of lishma. Because he's still doing it because you want to have a share in the world to come. There's a self-interest there. The ultimate level of lishma is, it has nothing to do with the person, because God commanded you and you understand who God is. There's no question you do it for the sake of God. It's not because you're a beneficiary. It's because Hashem said you must do it, and understanding who Hashem is, of course, you're privileged to do the will of God because the degree of understanding what Hashem is. But when you do it for the sake of a share in the world to come, it's still a self-interest. Although that's what Hashem wants on your behalf, and He put you on this earth. As it says in Pirkei Avos, this is a corridor. This is the prosdor to the ulam. This is the pathway to come to the ultimate destination. But ultimately, that's not the ultimate level of lishma, because we're going to point that out in a minute. If the reason why you do a mitzvah is because Hashem wants you to do a mitzvah, what do you mean? It's a mitzvah kala, mitzvah chamura. How do you start to differentiate between a more important mitzvah, a more severe mitzvah, a less severe mitzvah? You must do the mitzvah because it's the word of Hashem. Hashem wants you to do the mitzvah. That's where it begins, that's where it ends. When do we start evaluating and using the so-called human yardstick to evaluate what a mitzvah is? If you see yourself as you're the beneficiary, are you a greater beneficiary, a lesser beneficiary? Then we start evaluating what is and what's not. So therefore, as a result of this, even if you do it for the sake of a share in the world to come, what buys you, as we used to say, a bigger piece of the rock? What buys you a bigger piece of the rock? Observing Shabbos or doing something which doesn't have that same value? Once you approach it with that, then all of a sudden you start differentiating. There are going to be many mitzvahs which you're going to neglect. That's for your akev. You're going to trample, you're going to neglect mitzvahs, you're going to gloss over many mitzvahs because they're not going to have sufficient value because other mitzvahs have greater value. So even if you do it for the sake of a share in the world to come, this becomes an issue. You start picking and choosing. But if it's akev tishmu, that even the mitzvahs which people neglect because people pick and choose and you don't, and you do it purely because it's the will of Hashem, that's the ultimate level of lishma. If you do it with that intent, then you merit, Hashem will uphold the bris, the chesed, and the result of that, the ramifications and the consequence of that is unlimited bracha. God will love you. He will increase the fruit of your womb, the fruit of your flocks, your herds, the grain, the wine, the olives, everything is unlimited. But that's the differentiation. Therefore, it's voyekev. That's what's so special. It's not because you're valuing the underdog, so to say, because you're picking up where everybody else left off. No, that's not it. It's an indication of why your relation with Hashem. Now, I asked the question, what's the use the word mishpatim? The rational laws. The statutes and the rational laws. The answer is because what is your approach? It's mishpatim. A person says, Rabbi, that makes sense. That I could buy. The other thing is not so simple to accept. What do you mean? This makes sense. That the other thing's not so simple to accept. But even what's sensible in your context of what's logical and cogent, but that's not why God gave it to you. The value and the weight of the responsibilities, of course, is the will of Hashem. It's not because it makes sense to you, it doesn't make sense to you. That's why you must do it. Even the laws which are rational, which we believe we have an understanding of value, even those mitzvahs, and you do the ones which are less important, because to you the less important they're not less important. Because everything has the identical level of importance, because Hashem sets the criteria. It's His will, I'm here to do it. Therefore, there's no glossing over. There's no neglect. So when we read in Pirkei Avos, Havi Rotz Mitzvah Kala Kibcham Ura, you should pursue a mitzvah kala, seemingly less important mitzvah, as a more severe mitzvah. That's based on your yardstick. Because even your yardstick is inaccurate, because what you think is not that valuable or precious, it may have that ultimate level of preciousness, and therefore you're missing the point. But again, it's that even that person is doing it for his own self-interest. Here we're speaking about persons doing it selflessly, purely for the sake of God.